The human soldier woke slowly, feeling the cold metal under his back, the faint hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the bed. His head was heavy, his vision still blurred from the fight earlier. Lights above flickered in the strange, low gravity, making the room feel like it was moving. He blinked a few times, trying to understand where he was. He had been in the middle of the battlefield only hours ago, a plasma fire tearing through the air, the smell of burning metal and blood filling his lungs, and then nothing. He remembered falling, his armor cracked, his breath ragged. Then a bright flash. Now he was here. In the medical bay, he expected a cold machine or a tall alien medic to come through the door. Maybe a robot arm with scanners and needles. But instead, the door slid open with a soft hiss, and she walked in. She was not human, not even close. She was small, maybe 4 feet tall, with fur on her ears and a long tail swaying behind her. Her golden eyes caught the light and held it. Sharp and bright, she wore a simple medic's uniform, but it was torn at the sleeves, showing lean muscles underneath. Her steps were quick, confident, like she knew exactly what she was doing. The way her ears twitched told him she was listening to more than just him, maybe the whole ship. She stopped at the foot of the bed, looked him over, then climbed up without asking. Her weight was light, but her presence was strong. She knelt on his chest plate, her small hands pressing against his side where the armor had cracked. "Relax," she said, her voice low, almost a purr, but firm enough that it didn't sound like a request. He wanted to protest, to tell her he didn't need help from someone so small, but the look in her eyes stopped him. She had the gaze of a predator, calm but ready to strike. And somehow it made him still. She reached into a small pouch on her belt and pulled out a pouch filled with glowing blue powder. The light from it shimmered on her fur without another word. She sprinkled the powder on his wound. It tingled against his skin. Like hundreds of tiny sparks, her hands pressed firmly, sending heat into him. The pain faded faster than any medicine he had ever known. He stared at her, wondering what kind of healer she was. Her tail brushed against his arm lightly. Not by accident, her sharp eyes flicked to his face, watching for any reaction. She was studying him, not just healing. Her hands moved with speed, pressing here, checking there. Like she was measuring him, the soldier opened his mouth to ask what she was doing. But she pressed a finger gently against his lips. "Quiet," she said softly, her eyes glancing toward the medbay door as if someone might be listening. Her closeness made him aware of every movement she made. Every small breath she took. He realized then that she wasn't just a nurse. There was something else, something in the way she moved, the way she kept scanning the room while working, like she was expecting trouble. The medical bay was quiet except for the hum of the lights. Her ears kept twitching when she leaned closer to check the wound again. He caught a faint scent, wild and sharp, like rain on stone. It was nothing like the sterile smell of the med bay. It made him think of forests and danger. She caught him staring and gave a small smirk. "You're lucky I found you first," she whispered. The soldier frowned. "First?" he asked, his voice low. She didn't answer. Instead, she finished pressing the powder into his skin, then hopped lightly off the bed, her movements smooth. Almost too smooth for someone who was supposed to be a medic. She started cleaning the tools on the table, but her tail flicked restlessly, her gaze shifting to the door again. Finally, she turned back to him. "Stay here," she said, "and stay quiet." Her voice had that same firm tone as before, the kind that made him want to obey. Before he could reply, she walked to the door, stopped, and looked over her shoulder at him, her golden eyes sharp. "You'll understand soon," she said. Then the door slid open and she slipped out into the corridor, her tail vanishing from view. The soldier lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering who she really was and why she had been the one to treat him. The medical bay felt colder without her in it, and for the first time since he woke, he felt uneasy, not because of his injuries, but because he sensed something big was about to happen. And she was right in the middle of it. The human soldier stayed on the bed, staring at the closed door, his mind full of questions. The nurse was unlike anyone he had met before. She was small yet powerful, calm yet alert, and she had treated him with methods he didn't recognize. It made him wonder if she was even a real nurse or something else entirely. Minutes later, the door slid open again, and she returned, her steps light but quick, her tail swaying behind her like it had a mind of its own. She didn't say anything at first, just walked over to the bed and climbed back up, her small hands pressing against his chest as if checking his breathing. "You heal slower than I thought," she murmured, her golden eyes scanning his body. Then she reached into her pouch again, pulling out more of that strange glowing blue powder. It shimmered in the dim light of the medbay, casting tiny shadows on her fur. "This isn't standard human medicine," he said quietly. She gave a tiny smirk. "No, it's not," she replied. "It's better." She sprinkled the powder across his wound, then pressed both hands over it. The warmth spread instantly, sinking deep into his muscles. The feeling was unlike anything he'd experienced before. It wasn't just healing. It was as if her touch carried energy, strength flowing from her into him. His pain faded, his breathing steadied. And for a moment, he forgot where he was. Her gaze never left his face, watching every flicker of emotion. "You're strong," she said finally. "But your body fights itself. Too much tension." She shifted, moving closer, her knees pressing against his side as she leaned forward, her claws carefully retracted so only soft pads touched him. He tried to joke, "Maybe I'm just nervous because you're sitting on me." But she didn't laugh. Instead, she tilted her head, ears twitching. "Good," she said softly. "That means you're aware." Her words didn't make sense to him, but the way she said them made it feel important. As she worked, she started humming quietly, a low, rhythmic sound that seemed to match the beat of his heart. He felt his muscles relaxing without him trying, his mind clearing. It was like she was guiding his body into healing itself. After a while, she reached into another pouch and pulled out a small glass vial filled with a green liquid. She dipped her fingers into it and traced strange patterns across his skin, each line glowing faintly for a moment before fading. "These marks will tell your body where to heal faster," she explained. "Your species doesn't use them, but they work." He stared at her, still unsure whether to trust her completely. But his instincts told him she meant no harm. If anything, she seemed more protective than most of the human medics he had served with. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, like she had done this many times before. "You didn't learn this in a medical school?" he said. She gave a short laugh. "No," she replied. "I learned it on the battlefield, saving those who shouldn't have survived." Her voice softened, "And I will make sure you survive." For a moment, they just looked at each other, the hum of the medbay surrounding them. Then she suddenly shifted position, swinging one leg over so she was straddling his waist, leaning over him with her hands braced on either side of his head, her face close enough for him to see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes. "This will hurt," she warned, before pressing both palms against his chest and sending a sharp surge of heat through him. He gasped, his back arching against the bed. The heat wasn't pain exactly, but it was so intense it made his vision blur. She didn't move until it passed. Then she leaned back slightly, her tail flicking with satisfaction. "There," she said. "Now you'll heal twice as fast." He let out a shaky breath, wondering if she was some kind of miracle worker or a dangerous experiment in disguise. When she climbed off him, she stayed close, sitting on the edge of the bed with her tail brushing against his leg. "You should rest," she said. "But don't think you're out of danger yet." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. scanning the room again, as if expecting trouble at any moment. He wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her posture told him she wouldn't answer, at least not yet. Instead, she leaned down, adjusting the blanket over him, her movements gentle in contrast to her fierce expression. "You humans," she said quietly, almost to herself. "You don't understand how many eyes are watching you." Then she stood, taking her pouches and tools with her as she reached the door. She looked back one last time, her golden eyes locking with his. "When I tell you to move," she said, "you move." No questions before he could respond. The door slid shut behind her, leaving him alone again. The soldier lay there, his body warmer, stronger than before. But his mind full of questions. Something told him this was only the beginning. And whatever was coming next, the tiny Beastwoman nurse was going to be right in the middle of it. The medbay was quiet now, but the human soldier could not sleep. The warmth from her strange healing still pulsed through his body. Every breath felt easier, every heartbeat stronger. Yet his mind was full of questions. He had faced battles, explosions, even near death. But this was different. This was a mystery wrapped in the shape of a tiny Beastwoman nurse. He kept replaying her last words in his mind. "When I tell you to move, you move." It wasn't just advice. It had sounded like a warning, the kind a soldier gave before the enemy. Struck, he stared at the ceiling, the hum of the ship's engines steady in his ears. After what felt like an hour, the door slid open without sound. She stepped inside, her furred ears twitching, tail moving in slow arcs behind her. She didn't rush, but her movements had purpose. Her golden eyes locked on him as she approached. "You're still awake," she murmured, almost like she expected. He pushed himself up on one elbow. "You said I'm not out of danger," he whispered. "What did you mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder toward the door. Listening, her ears twitched again, catching sounds he couldn't hear. Finally, she leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're hunting humans." Now, the words hit him like a cold wind. "Who's they?" he asked, but she only gave a faint smile without humor. "The ones who control the shadows on this ship, and maybe beyond," he frowned. "Why would they hunt humans?" "This is a neutral ship." She shook her head. "Neutral until it's not." Her tail flicked once. "Sharp and quick. You don't see them, but they see you. And they remember every fight you've survived." He felt a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with his injuries. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Her eyes softened just slightly. "Because someone like you saved someone like me." He blinked. "I don't remember," but then he did. The memory rushing back. A mission months ago. A collapsing mining tunnel, smoke, choking. The air, and a small figure trapped under steel beams. He had lifted the debris and carried her to safety, never expecting thanks. She had been a Beastwoman scout. Terrified but alive. "That was your clan?" he asked quietly. She nodded once. "My sister," she said. Her voice flat, but her eyes holding something deeper. "You saved her life, so now I save yours." The soldier didn't know what to say, but she didn't give him the chance. "I'm not supposed to be here," she continued. "My assignment was somewhere else, but I took this post to watch you, to make sure you stay alive until we reach safe space." Something in her tone told him that safe space was far away. Maybe too far. He leaned forward. "If there's a threat, we should alert the captain." She shook her head sharply. "No, the captain already knows, and he allows it." That made his stomach twist. "Then, who can we trust?" he asked. She held his gaze for a long moment. "Right now." "Only me." The weight of her words sank in. He had fought beside soldiers, worked with medics, even trusted machines with his life. But this was different. This was survival in a place where danger wasn't loud and obvious. It was quiet. Hidden, waiting, she reached into her pouch again, pulling out a small round device no bigger than a coin. It was matte black with strange markings on it. "This will let me find you anywhere on the ship," she said. "If you hear it hum, it means run, and don't look back." She pressed it into his palm, her hand warm against his skin. The soldier closed his fingers around it, feeling its light weight. "And if I can't run?" he asked, her sharp teeth showed in a faint smile. "Then you fight, and I'll be there." She straightened, glancing at the door again. Her ears flattening slightly. "I have to go," she said. "But remember, you only move when I tell." "You?" He nodded slowly, realizing how serious she was. Before she left, she paused, looking at him with a strange mix of intensity and care. "You're not like the others," she murmured. "Most humans I've seen are careless, loud, they think they're untouchable, but you watch, you listen." She tilted her head slightly. "That might be the only reason you survive." Then she was gone, the door closing silently behind her, leaving him alone with the small device in his hand and the sound of his own heartbeat. He lay back down, staring at the ceiling again, but the med bay no longer felt safe. Every shadow seemed sharper, every sound louder. He didn't know when she would return, or what exactly she was protecting him from. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever was coming, 'twas already moving in the dark, and he was now part of it. The soldier didn't sleep that cycle. The small device she had given him rested in his hand, like a silent promise he kept. Turning it over between his fingers, studying the strange markings carved into its surface. They weren't human letters, not even close. But somehow he felt like the symbols were meant to be a warning. Hours passed in the dim glow of the med bay lights, until the door opened again. She stepped inside, moving with the same quiet, measured steps. This time she wasn't carrying her usual medical kit. Instead, she had a small, worn pack slung over her shoulder. Without a word, she walked to him, climbed onto the bed like it was the most natural thing in the world, and sat on his legs. While opening the pack, she pulled out a folded bundle of cloth and a short, curved blade that shimmered faintly in the light. "This isn't standard human gear," she said, her voice low. "It's from my people. It will cut through almost anything, even armor." She handed him the blade, its handle wrapped in soft leather, light but perfectly balanced, the kind of weapon meant for speed, not brute strength. He turned it in his hand, feeling the strange hum in the metal. "Why are you giving me this?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for his armor, pulling it toward her, "Because," she said, climbing higher on the bed to reach the straps across his chest, "your standard armor is too slow, too loud, and if the threat comes, you'll need to move fast." Her hands worked quickly, unfastening some parts, tightening others. Her claws carefully retracted so they wouldn't scratch the plates. She adjusted the straps so they hugged his frame more tightly. "If you can't move like me, you can't fight with me," she added. He raised an eyebrow. "Fight with you?" She gave a small, sharp smile. "You think I'm just a nurse?" She leaned closer, her golden eyes narrowing. "I've fought in battles you can't imagine, and I'm not about to let you slow me down." She reached into the pack again and pulled out a small crystal, no bigger than her thumb. It pulsed with faint blue light. "This," she explained, "will bend light around you for a short time. Not perfect invisibility, but close enough to avoid most scanners." She tucked it into a hidden pocket on his chest plate, her touch lingering for a second longer than necessary. As she worked, her tail brushed against him occasionally. Not by accident, he realized she was measuring his reactions, testing his awareness. It reminded him of the way she had studied him during the healing earlier. "You're preparing me," he said finally, "for something you're not telling me." She met his gaze without flinching. "Yes," she said simply. "Because if I tell you everything, you'll think too much." And when the moment comes, you need to move. Not think, he sighed, frustrated but oddly trusting her. You could at least tell me why me. She tilted her head, her ears flicking forward. Because you're stubborn. And stubborn humans live longer, she said, a hint of amusement in her tone. Also, I owe you. When she finished adjusting his armor, she tested the fit by pressing against his shoulders, then against his chest, shifting his stance. Better, she said. You can run now without sounding like a cargo hauler. She hopped off the bed, landing silently despite the metal floor. Then she reached into the pack one last time and pulled out a thin band made of dark metal. Wear this on your wrist, she instructed. It's linked to the device I gave you earlier. If you're in danger, it will vibrate once and I'll come to you. He slipped it on. Feeling its cold weight against his skin, you're setting up a rescue plan, he said. She shook her head. No, she replied. I'm setting up a fight plan. Her eyes gleamed. If they come for you, we don't run, we strike first. The soldier felt a strange mix of adrenaline and unease. He had fought plenty of battles, but never with someone like her. She was small, almost delicate looking. Yet she moved and spoke like a predator, ready to tear apart anything in her way. Why? Risk yourself for me, he asked quietly. She paused at the doorway, her tail curling once. Because you didn't think twice before lifting a burning beam off my sister, she said, and because humans are worth more than they realize. Then she was gone again, leaving him with new gear, a strange weapon, and a mind full of questions. He sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the curved blade, feeling its hum through his palm. The med bay no longer felt like a place to rest. It felt like a waiting room before something dangerous. He didn't know when the moment would come, or what exactly the plan was, but one thing was certain. When she gave the order to move, he would follow, and this time he would be ready. The soldier woke to the sound of alarms, sharp and urgent, echoing through the corridors like a living thing. The med bay lights shifted to red, pulsing in time with the sirens. The vibration under the bed was stronger now, the ship's engines roaring harder as if trying to outrun something. Before he could get up, the door burst open and she was there, her furred ears flat against her head, her tail lashing behind her like a whip. She didn't waste a second. Move, she ordered, her voice cutting through the noise. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, already feeling the weight of the curved blade on his hip. The armor she had adjusted fit snugly. Ow. No clattering plates, no wasted movement. She tossed him a small satchel. Take it, she said. Don't open it unless I tell you. The floor shook under them. Distant thuds rattling the walls. They're already on board, she said, her eyes scanning the room. We have seconds before they reach this section. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the corner, opening a narrow panel in the wall. Behind it was a dimly lit service tunnel, just wide enough for them to crawl through. She slipped inside without hesitation, moving on all fours with the smooth speed of a predator. He followed, trying to match her pace, the metal under his hands cold and vibrating with the hum of the ship. The tunnel twisted and dipped, the sounds of blaster fire growing louder in the distance. Suddenly, she stopped. Pressing her back against the tunnel wall, she held up one hand, signaling for silence. Her ears twitched, catching sounds he couldn't hear. Then she whispered. Two of them ahead. He could feel his pulse in his throat. The tunnel opened into a small maintenance chamber, and there they were, two enemy soldiers in dark armor, their backs turned, setting small charges along a wall. She crouched low, her golden eyes locked on the targets. Quiet kill, she mouthed. She moved, first leaping forward in one smooth motion, her claws flashing as she slit the first soldier's throat before he even realized she was there. The second turned blaster half-raised, but the soldier lunged from behind, driving the curved blade through the gap in the armor, the hum of the weapon slicing clean through. The enemy fell without a sound. She gave a quick nod, approving. Better. She said, "You're learning." She pulled the charges off the wall and tossed them into a corner. "We can't let them set explosives in the main hull." They moved on, deeper into the tunnel network, the ship groaning around them as more explosions went off somewhere above. The vibrations were stronger now. Dust falling from the ceiling with every distant impact. At a junction, she paused, her tail curling. "They're splitting into two groups," she said. "One will try to reach the bridge. The other will hunt anyone left in medbay and engineering, and us." He asked. She smiled faintly. "We're going to stop the ones heading for the bridge." They emerged from the tunnel into a wide cargo bay. Dim light spilling from overhead panels, crates stacked high along the walls. The air thick with the smell of fuel and metal. And there at the far end, enemy soldiers moving in formation, weapons ready. She didn't hesitate. Sprinting forward, her small frame weaving between crates, he stayed close, using the stacks. For cover, she signaled with quick hand gestures. Pointing to two soldiers on the flank, he nodded, circling to cut them off. The first never saw him coming. A quick slash with the curved blade dropped him silently. The second turned at the sound, but a burst from his sidearm ended it, across the bay. She was a blur of motion, leaping onto a soldier's back, ripping the helmet away before driving her claws into the vulnerable spot beneath. When the last one fell, the cargo bay was quiet except for the distant rumble of battle elsewhere. She jogged back to him, breathing steady despite the fight. "This is only a fraction of them," she said. "The rest are still coming." He glanced at the satchel she had given him earlier. "Time to open this?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. You'll know when." Her eyes scanned the shadows, ears twitching again. "We need to move. Now." Okay. They slipped through another maintenance hatch, the corridor beyond shaking violently as the ship took another hit, the red lights flashing in warning. He could hear muffled shouts and footsteps from nearby passageways. As they moved, he realized something. She wasn't just reacting to the attack. She was guiding him along a path she already knew, avoiding the heaviest fighting. Cutting through shortcuts, using service tunnels most people didn't even know existed. "This isn't the first time you've done this," he said, between breaths. She smirked. "No, and it won't be the last." She paused at another junction, her tail flicking once. "We're close to the bridge. But the hardest part is still ahead." For a moment, they locked eyes. The chaos of the ship fading in the background. He understood then that whatever happened next, they would face it together. She gave a sharp nod. "Stay close, and when I climb, you climb." And with that, she darted into the next corridor. The sound of enemy boots growing louder, the fight far from over. The bridge was close now. But the path to it was anything but clear. The air was thick with the smell of burned metal. The sound of shouting and weapons fire echoing from every direction. The deck under their feet trembled as if the ship itself was in pain. She moved first, gliding low and fast along the wall, her ears twitching at every sound, her tail curling and snapping as if it had its own instincts. He followed her lead, copying her movements, keeping his curved blade ready in one hand and his sidearm in the other. They reached a half-open blast door. Beyond it lay the final stretch before the bridge, but it was crawling with enemy soldiers, black armored figures moving in formation, rifles ready. One of them was planting a heavy breaching charge against the bridge door itself. She looked back at him, her golden eyes locking with his, and she gave a single hand signal. We hit them now. There was no time to talk, no time to plan more. She darted forward first, moving so fast she was a blur, leaping onto the nearest soldier's back before he could turn, her claws raking across his armor, her momentum carrying them both to the floor. He didn't hesitate, sliding in low, his curved blade slicing under the rifle of another soldier before they could fire. The hum of the weapon cutting clean through the enemy's leg armor. The soldier collapsed with a sharp cry. The blast door corridor turned into chaos, the enemies shouting, trying to turn their weapons on them. But the narrow space worked against them. Crates and piping along the walls, breaking up their formations. She was everywhere at once, darting between legs, climbing over shoulders. Using her small size to get inside their guard, he kept close, covering her flanks, blasting any soldier who tried to line up a shot. A grenade clinked against the floor, rolling toward them. Her ears twitched at the sound, and she grabbed his arm, dragging him behind a stack of steel crates just as it went off. The blast shook the air, the heat licking around the edges of their cover. She didn't pause, vaulting over the crates and landing on an enemy still dazed from the blast, her claws flashing as she tore the breaching device from his grip and hurled it aside. It skidded across the deck and exploded harmlessly against the far wall. He took down another with a quick combination, a shot to the leg, then a slash across the chest plate where the armor was weakest. His movements sharper now, more in sync with hers. At one point, he saw her leap high onto the wall, using a metal brace as a springboard. Launching herself down onto an enemy twice her size, they hit the deck hard, and she was already stabbing a slim dagger into the gap under his helmet. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. A glance, a nod, a flick of her tail, that was enough for him to know what to do. It was as if they'd been fighting together for years instead of hours. The last soldier tried to run. Bolting down the corridor toward the aft section, she lunged after him, but he swung his rifle around, in desperation, aiming for her chest before he could fire. The soldier raised his sidearm and sent a clean shot between the plates of the enemy's back armor. The figure stumbled and fell face first onto the deck. The corridor went quiet, except for the steady hum of the ship and the distant echoes of fighting elsewhere. She stood there, chest rising and falling, golden eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You fight well for a human," she said, her tone almost approving. "You learn fast." He smiled faintly despite the blood on his armor. "You fight well for a nurse." She gave a short laugh at that. "Told you I'm not just a nurse." They approached the bridge door. The captain and a few crew members inside, watching through the reinforced glass. Their faces pale but alive. She tapped the controls and the door slid open, the captain stepping forward. "We saw everything on the cams," he said. "You too. Saved the ship." But she didn't look at the captain. Her eyes stayed on the soldier. "We're not done yet," she said quietly. "This was just the first wave." His jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready for the next." She moved closer, her tail brushing his leg in a rare gesture of familiarity. "From now on," she said, "you fight with me, not behind me." He nodded, knowing it wasn't just a request, it was a bond sealed in battle somewhere deep in the ship. Another alarm started to wail. Lower, slower, more ominous than before. She glanced toward the sound, then back at him. "Looks like we get to test how well you've learned," she said, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. And without another word, she turned and sprinted toward the sound, and he followed. Their footsteps echoing together, two fighters moving as one toward whatever waited in the shadows of the ship. Asterisk, the lower alarm echoed through the corridors. Slower and deeper than the earlier one. It wasn't the sharp call of boarding soldiers. It was heavier, like a warning for something far worse. The soldier and the tiny Beastwoman nurse moved fast, their boots and paws thudding in unison against the metal deck. The ship's lights flickered again, shadows dancing along the walls as they pushed forward. He could feel the heat of her presence ahead of him, her tail swaying in sharp, precise movements. Every flick a sign she was listening, calculating, sensing the threat before they reached it. They turned a corner and entered the auxiliary hangar. The place was dim, filled with the silhouettes of cargo haulers and supply crates. In the center stood a single large figure, covered head to toe in dark segmented armor, its glowing visor. Scanning the space slowly, methodically, she stopped so suddenly he almost collided with her. "That's not a soldier," she whispered, her ears flat against her head. "That's a hunter." He had heard the stories hunters didn't take. Prisoners. They didn't stop until the target was dead. The hunter moved, slow but deliberate, each step heavy enough to make the floor tremble. It was searching for something, and from the way its visor tilted toward them, he knew it had already found. "Stay low," she hissed, but before they could hide, the hunter raised a weapon unlike any he'd seen, a thick barrel with swirling energy inside. She shoved him behind a crate just as a blast tore through the air. The crate shuddered and split, heat washing over them. They didn't have time to wait it out. She leaped from cover, darting across the hangar floor in a zigzag, her small size and speed making her almost impossible to track. He followed her lead, sprinting low and fast, the curved blade tight in his grip. The hunter swung its massive arm, catching her mid-run, the impact sending her crashing into a wall. He felt his chest tighten, a sharp rush of panic pushing him forward. He fired his sidearm at the hunter, the shots sparking off its armor, drawing its attention toward him. She shook off the hit, rolling to her feet with a low growl. "Aim for the joints," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. He nodded, focusing on the gaps between the black plates, waiting for the right moment. The hunter charged, its heavy steps pounding the floor. He sidestepped at the last second, slashing the blade across the back of its knee joint. Sparks flew as the metal gave way. The massive figure stumbled, just long enough for her to leap onto its back. Claws digging deep, she climbed up fast, pulling something small from her belt, a glowing crystal. "Charge!" She jammed it into the gap at the base of the helmet. The hunter roared, twisting violently, trying to throw her off. "Now?" she shouted, and he understood. He grabbed the satchel she had given him back in the med bay, yanking it open for the first time. Inside was a small control unit linked to the charge. He slammed his thumb onto the activator. A blinding flash filled the hangar, the charge detonating with a sharp, concussive blast. The hunter froze, then collapsed forward with a heavy metallic thud, smoke curling from the gap in its armor. For a moment, everything was still. The only sound was their breathing, ragged and heavy. She slid off the hunter's back, landing lightly beside him despite the fight. Her fur was ruffled, a thin cut along her cheek, but her golden eyes were steady. "You listened," she said, her voice softer now. "That's why you're alive." He managed a tired smile. "I had a good teacher." They stood there in the hangar, the alarms finally quieting, the distant thrum of the engines settling into a calmer rhythm. The ship was safe for now. She stepped closer, her tail brushing against his side, and that way she did only when she was being honest. "You fought with me, bled with me," she said. "That makes you more than just a soldier I owe a debt to." He looked at her, unsure how to answer. But she didn't need him to. Instead, she reached up, pressing her palm lightly against his chest plate, right over where the hidden crystal she had given him was still tucked. "Keep it," she said, "even when we part ways. It will find me, and I will find you." He closed his hand over hers, feeling the strange warmth of her touch. "Then I guess I'm stuck with you," he said, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. She smirked in return. "No human," she replied. "I'm stuck with you." They left the hangar side by side, walking through the quiet corridors as the crew began repairs. Eyes followed them, whispers passing between those who had seen the security feeds, the tiny Beastwoman nurse and the human soldier who had fought like one mind, one purpose. By the time they reached the med bay again, Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of what they had survived. And what they knew would come again someday, when she finally broke the silence. Her voice was calm, certain. "Next time, I won't just heal you," she said. "Next time, we'll hunt together." And the soldier, without hesitation, nodded, because he knew she meant it. And because deep down, he wanted it too.